Okay, so next let's look at how to get some different materials and shaders on these guys. Now the cool thing about this render view and the cool thing about Arnold is that this is an IPR render, so it's interactive progressive rendering. So as we make updates to stuff, what we can do is we'll see that update happening in real time in this window. So another really cool feature of this is that we can go to Window, 3D Manipulation, and now we can actually alt click and drag around in our scene, which is awesome, super cool. So let's start by let's maybe make our 3 a big metal looking material. So what I'm going to do is just right click on the 3 and go all the way down to assign new materials, and we will assign a Arnold shader, and we will do an AI standard. So this is pretty much going to be the thing we apply to everything. We're going to shade our entire scene using that AI standard shader. Now I'll minimize all of this to try and explain to you what components every shader is made up of. Most shaders are made up of 4 different things. So you have diffuse, which is your color. So you know, that's just going to be like our surface color. You have your reflection, which in this case in Arnold it breaks it down into 2 different types of reflection. You have specular reflection and reflection. So in Arnold, your specular will reflect your light sources and your reflection will reflect your environment. But in reality, these are both just a light reflection. So you have diffuse, light reflection, refraction. This is going to be what light does when it passes inside of the object. So like glass, or what we want to do with this object here, that would be refraction. And then we have emission. So that's going to be how it emits light. So if we wanted to do a simple sort of chrome-like material for this 3, we would come to our diffuse color, our weight, and we would knock it all the way down, because a chrome material is only going to reflect, it's like a mirror almost, it just reflects what's in the environment. So it has no real diffuse surface color. So then we'll come down to our specular and bring our weight on the specular all the way up. And now we're seeing our light sources being reflected. You have your roughness. So the less rough it is, now we see that it looks very shiny and slick and wet. And just to show you the difference, I'll take the weight of my specular all the way down, and then we'll go to reflection and plug in a high weight for the reflection. So now we're actually seeing our objects, other objects being what you're seeing here is the ground plane being reflected in this 3. So you want to use these in conjunction with each other. So we'll bring both of those guys back up. And basically why this is showing up black is because if I turn my scene around, it's just black. So if we did like some HDR lighting or something, then we would see more in there. But what we see now, and I may do that, I may put an image in the background so we see some cool reflections, but you know, from the back it looks good because it's reflecting that wall. But from up front, if we look at it maybe a lower angle, but as I increase the roughness, it's going to look a little bit more shiny. Anisotropy is basically going to make it look lathed, so it's going to stretch out your highlight. So if I bring it all the way down, we're going to see really stretched highlights. It's going to be kind of hard to see in this example. And then Fresnel is basically like your facing angle. So if you, and the S is silent, and I know it may sound like I'm pronouncing Fresnel, which is a different person altogether, but it's Fresnel is how you pronounce that. and this is basically like a facing angle. So if you've ever noticed how windows, at some angles you look through a window and it's like you see right through it, and other angles you'll look through the window and it's completely reflective. It's like a mirror. So this is basically going to change the facing angle of your reflections. So we can tweak that. I think I'm going to do something like 0.8, and I'm going to enable that down here on my reflections too. So 0.8 just makes it look a little bit more realistic. So that looks good. So next we can look at maybe our flourishes. We want those to look like neon lights, so I want them to look like they're emitting light. So what I'm going to do for these guys is I'm going to select them both together, which they're one object, and we will assign a new material again, and same material, so shader AI standard, and we can keep everything as it is. We can probably we can probably leave everything for now. Maybe I'll change up the color, but let's jump all the way down to emission, and we'll bump up our scale, and let's take our color red color, and we can bump our scale up above 1, and they're going to emit more light as we do that. We can also do this with object lights. So another thing I can do to make this look like neon lights, and it may actually be a little bit more accurate, is to, so let's bump this back down to 0. So you go back down to 0, and you go back to white. So we can make these object lights. So with these selected, we can just click on our object light here, or we can go into the actual object shape node, and under Arnold, instead of Arnold translator, it's currently polymesh. We can change that to mesh light, and then we're going to get some lighting controls. So what we can do is say light is visible, and we can change our color to, again, like a red color, and we can start bumping up our intensity and exposure. To get the results we want. This is going to start looking really cool when it's like up against the wall. So if I take my ground plane and move it forward, we can get some really cool stuff happening there, and that may be what I do, but for now we'll sort of leave it how it is. I'm just going to come in and take my exposure back down to 1, so it's not as intense. That's also going to make your light take longer to render. So yeah, that's how we can deal with that. As far as this guy, for the moment, I'm not sure what I want to do with that either. So let's just assign a new material, and I'm just going to make him like a matte black. So I'm going to bump up the diffuse weight, make it black, and we'll come down to specular and bring some specular and make it rough. So it's just kind of like a matte black. We can bring our roughness under diffuse up as well. And And now for this, if we want it to make it look like a block of ice or a piece of glass, and I accidentally moved that guy, that's okay. Let's go ahead and move him. We'll go ahead and move him up. So our word is inside of there. And we can right click, go to assign new material once again, and I should be naming these, I'm not, but add an AI standard. And for this one, I want to have 0 diffuse weight. We'll talk about our specular and reflection here in a second, but first I want to come down to refraction, and we'll look at some of our refraction options. So I'll turn my weight all the way up. And we're basically going to see right through it. Like it's not even there. Your IOR, this is index of refraction. You can look this up, and like if we wanted to do crystal, we could do crystal, but it's an actual thing. You can wiki it, and if you want to do Kool-Aid, you can find the index of refraction for Kool-Aid, and you plug that in, and it'll be pretty much physically accurate. I think water is like 1.33 or something like that. So with that, now we can actually see the object there, and we can see the refractions happening, the light bending. We can use Fresnel IOR. We can increase our roughness a little bit. And we could change the color of the material, but this isn't going to be physically accurate. What we want to do is change the transmittance. So this is going to be the color that's actually going to, it'll make it look like it's, let's say I wanted it to be slightly a blue, very, very light blue. And then opacity is basically what it is. So yeah, that's how we do that if we want it to make it look a little bit. And the more we increase this IOR, so if I made it something ridiculous like 2, we're going to see more light bending in there, and a kind of a more, I don't know the term I'm looking for, but the things inside of this will skew a lot more. But water is like 1.3. We can come up to our specular now and start adding some specular. I'll take the roughness down on the specular so it looks shiny. So that's actually starting to look kind of cool. And we could turn Fresnel on as well. This is a weird thing that happens in Arnold sometimes. With Fresnel on, you can't manipulate that slider. The only fix for this is I found to just open up your hypershade, and I think you can still edit it in your hypershade. Yeah, so now I can change it in my hypershade, but for some reason it doesn't let me change it there. But I actually think it looks cooler with it off, and we can increase our reflection weight on that as well, so we can see some of the environment in there. And what's really cool is I could go into that material, and this would create a really neat effect, is I could go into our word "the." So let's see if I can select that. So do to select and see if I can find its material. So we could take this guy and is that the right one? Doesn't look like the right one. Let's go to our hypershade. Better safe than sorry. And this is definitely why it looks like the right one, black one. AI standard 4. Sometimes Arnold doesn't want to update and we need to just close our render and reopen it. But that still doesn't seem to be that color. I can see the specular change on it, obviously. Seem to be changing. Anyway, what we can do, a really cool effect that you can get is come down to emission and then make this guy emit some light. I emit like a blue light. It's probably a little too much. But that is a pretty cool effect, and we see it sort of in our 3 there as well. But I think I'm okay with it just being black for now. Yeah, so I think that looks pretty cool. And then for this guy, we I guess it's time to start figuring out what to do with the different materials. So we could do we can make this like a milky looking stone surface. So I'll assign new material. Again, we'll do the same thing, AI standard. And let's go ahead and name this one to dimension matte. And so we're going to do, let's try making it like a milky looking stone, like jade or something like that. So that's, we're actually going to deal with refraction a little bit there. So we'll bump up our weight. And we want our roughness to be really rough inside of there. We'll make it like a green jade color. We'll make our IOR kind of high, so like maybe 2, 1.2, 1.5. Let's see. Looking like much of anything, is it? There we go. Make that white again, and we'll change our transmittance color to a green. And dispersion add, so that's going to make it look kind of milky. So sometimes you'll try something like this and it just isn't giving you the result. I think what we want to do instead is probably give it some diffuse color. So instead, let's try using like subsurface scattering. Give it a little bit of specular. Bit of reflection. let's go to subsurface scattering, turn that on, and then we can change our green to a little brighter green. So, I mean, that may or may not give you the result you're looking for. But I think I've gone through enough for this. I may tweak it quite a bit more. I'm kind of happy with how this turned out, where it looks like it's sort of frozen inside of there. The one thing that you do want to check with that is in your glass attributes, or this is actually going to be in your, let's see, refraction. Yeah, so this is actually going to be in your shape node. So if we just click on this object and go to the SVG shape mesh, yeah, so we have this opaque setting, so I want to click that and make it not opaque. And now we get some other cool little highlights happening in there. Because otherwise some of that refraction stuff doesn't work if it's set to opaque. We can enable caustics. This is going to probably not do anything significant in this case, but this is basically just how, like, when light passes through an object and you get sort of like the prism effect. Let's make this guy a different color before we end the session. Maybe we'll do a blue. That green scattering happening. And we'll bump up the intensity on these lights. So there's some shader stuff. I'll let this render, and then we'll get into probably from here on out. I'm just going to be kind of tweaking it and trying different things to get it to look as cool as I want it to look.